In this video, I'll be discussing diplomacy, true neutral territories, pro-allied territories, and pro-Axis territories. And at the end of the video, I'll be doing some live hand modeling where I go through these rules while talking about and pointing out things that are completely off screen. G.I. Joe and Hambone make it look a lot easier than it is. Turn phases. These are the turn phases of Axis and Allies, 1 through 7. I want to add a new phase at the beginning called diplomacy. This will allow the major powers to affect the status of any neutral territories. The global map is big and beautiful, but what people don't always realize is that some of it is effectively off limits. Diplomacy is going to open up the entire map as a means to wage war against the opposite faction. We can refresh our views about critical locations that we used to think differently on, change our focus, and then we can zoom into these areas with the neutrals and attempt to make direct changes to these critical territories. Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Afghanistan. We can also use diplomacy to affect the pro-Axis and pro-Allied territories and switch them to the other sides, Iraq and Iran. Without diplomacy, there are 12 major territories locked out of play. I want to focus on a very little used continent in the Southwest. Diplomacy lets us bring South America into the war. Venezuela, directly connected to the Panama Canal, and Central America territory right there. Brazil, diplomatically get Brazil to change its allegiance and turn into a full neutral. Or as an allied faction, you can get Brazil to mobilize on your turn. Argentina, Chile. In the Bloodbath rule set, both Chile and Argentina turn pro-Axis when Germany reaches 53 IPCs on the income tracker. You can use diplomacy to turn your pro-Axis territories into mobilized units. Conversely, as the Allies, diplomatically revert them back to full neutrals and keep Germany from getting them as a bonus income. Diplomacy. I want to focus in on that other little used neutral zone in the upper right, and that's Mongolia. As Japan or Russia, you can directly affect the statuses of the independent regional zones. There's Olgi, Dzavan, Ulaanbaatar, and Buyant-Uha. As Japan, you can turn them pro-Axis, gain them as territories, and not break the Mongolian rule. If Japan takes both the Ulaanbaatar and Buyant-Uha, Japan then has free rein to hit the Russian territories of Amur and Buryata, as they are now pro-Axis, or likely Japanese territories, without breaking the Mongolian rule. These diplomacy rules are based on a very cool hex wargame called Unconditional Surrender. It focuses on the northern Africa and the European part of World War II. It has a lot of details from terrain, time, weather, convoys. Individual unit groups are moved to wage war across a very detailed map. You can learn a lot from playing these types of games. Anyway, back to the show. Neutral territories are identified in one of these three categories: pro-Axis, strict neutral, and pro-allies. Only the major powers can utilize diplomacy. You have the Axis with Germany, Japan, and Italy. And then you have the Allies with Russia, the United Kingdom, and the United States. Diplomacy starts out with 10 active chips. The gray one is a no-event chip, the red one is the pro-Axis chip, and the green one is the pro-Allies chip. These 10 chips are put into a cup that will then later be used in a blind draw. A country can make up to 3 diplomatic actions. All actions have to be declared prior to making any diplomacy attempts, and only 1 diplomatic action can be attempted per territory on your turn. There are 2 types of diplomatic actions. Every action costs 1 IPC. You can add one of your pro-faction chips to the diplomacy cup, or you can pull a random chip out of the diplomacy cup. This is how it works in general. Axis sides will add pro-Axis chips to the Diplomacy Cup. The Allied sides will add pro-Allied chips to the Diplomacy Cup. Sometimes the countries will attempt a diplomatic action with a territory hoping to pull one of their faction's chips. Pulling a diplomatic chip. A gray, no-event chip. When you pull this, nothing happens. You put this marker back in the Diplomacy Cup after finishing your diplomatic actions. The gray chips stay in the Diplomacy Cup. Better luck next time. Pulling a diplomatic chip. Political failure. This one is never good. It's always a risk. You've pulled the opposing faction's diplomatic chip. Your negotiations have failed. There are political coups against you. Other diplomatic teams have convinced the standing government against you. You're just screwed. This marker is now used and it is discarded. If the territory had no pro marker on it, put the enemy's pro faction on it. If the pro enemy faction marker, then the territory is now going to mobilize on your turn. If it has a pro friendly marker on it, then remove that marker. Here's an example of political failure. USA makes a diplomatic action in an attempt to get Spain to join its pro-Allied side. USA pulls a random chip from the Diplomacy Cup and gets a red pro-Axis chip. This means that Spain moves from strict neutral to pro-Axis. Pulling a diplomatic chip. Political success. This one's always good. You pulled your faction's diplomatic chip. Your negotiations have had a breakthrough. You're seeing things together. You have beneficial economic plans. The marker is now used and it is discarded. If the territory had no pro marker on it, then put your pro faction marker on it. If it already has a pro friendly marker on it, then that territory now becomes yours, and those units are going to mobilize on your turn. If it has an enemy faction marker on it, then remove that marker. Here's an example of political success. Germany makes a diplomatic action for Spain. Spain is currently a pro-Axis territory. Germany attempts to get Spain to join its pro-Axis side. Germany pulls a random chip from the Diplomacy Cup and gets a red pro-Axis chip. This means that Spain moves from pro-Axis to a German territory. Historical reference for Russia. Joseph Stalin controlled the foreign policy of the Soviet Union, with Vladimir Molotov as his foreign minister. Soviet State Security Services, the NKVD, People's Commissariat for Internal Affairs, responsible for counterintelligence and internal security, and the NKGB's People's Commissariat for the State Security, responsible for foreign intelligence, as well as their relations with the GRU, which is military intelligence. For the next 2 years, the USSR supplied Germany with oil and grain. Furthermore, the Kremlin ordered communist parties around the world to denounce the imperialistic war waged by Britain and France against Germany. For example, during the entire period up to the fall of France, the British Communist Party functioned as a propaganda agency for Hitler. Historical reference: Japan. Focused primarily on Asian sphere of influence, Japan preached the unity of the Great East Asia Co-Prosperity Sphere, a coalition of Asian races directed by Japan against the imperialism of Britain, France, and the Netherlands, and the United States, and Europe in general. This approach celebrated the spiritual values of the East in opposition to the crass materialism of the West. Historical reference: United Kingdom. The Treaty of Jeddah. Saudi Arabia's non-aggression to the UK protectorates. Anglo-Franco-Turkish Treaty. In World War II, Turkey had an active Anglo-Franco-Turkish treaty with the Allies that allow it to remain both isolated and specific to the Protocol number 2 of that treaty, completely apart from any declaration of war. But internally, during the German spread through France, Yugoslavia, and Greece, it was very close to switching sides and openly backing the Axis Pact. During the war, both UK and Germany were active in attempting negotiations with Turkey to get them to join their war efforts. German political pressure resulted in a coup with the overthrow of Iraq. Turkey was allowed German occupying forces inside its borders so that it was directly involved in support for the anti-British coup in Iraq. Historical reference: Germany. Türkisch-Deutscher Freundschaftsvertrag, the Treaty of Friendship, a non-aggression pact signed between Nazi Germany and Turkey on 18th of June 1941. Afghanistan Abwehr Relations. The Minister of National Economy, Abdul Majid, allowed the Abwehr military intelligence organization to establish a small station in Kabul, supporting the German reinforcement of the Afghan-Soviet border. Spain, the fascist dictatorship run by General Franco, who won the Spanish Civil War a few years before at the start of World War II, and with a lot of help from Adolf Hitler and Benito Mussolini. The Blue Division was completely Spanish division, serving in the German army on the Eastern Front.
All right, let's do a quick rundown on the scenario. Now, this is the order of 1942, and so Russia would end up starting in this case. So, Russia decides that they're going to only spend one IPC on diplomacy. Now, she can either add pro-Allies ships, to the bag, or she could randomly pull out of the bag. In this case, she's just going to add a pro-Allies ship to the bag. That's one IPC. And from that point, does her term, purchases units, blah, 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 finishes term, blah, blah. It becomes Japan's turn. Now, Japan wants to open up Mongolia. They're looking at Mongolia over here and they're like, oh, let's open up Mongolia. His real key is going to not be back in Olige. He wants to get Buyant Uaha and Ulaanbaatar, because if he had both of those as pro-Axis, he could, or just one of them, he could walk in. If he had two of them, he could walk through them all. But you'll see that Amur is actually adjacent to both of them. So he'd want to try to get both of them on diplomacy. He'd never break the Mongolian rule. They would be pro-Axis, and he could actually attack all the way through Buryata and Umar without breaking the treaty. So this is what he's going for. He's like, I'm taking Buyant Uha right off the bat because Japan's going to get himself some cavalry. At least pro-Axis at the moment. So he says, I'm going to get two pro-Allied. He's going to take it up, right? So he's going to take his two pro-Axis. Going to spend $3. So that's $1 a piece. That is going to go inside the bag. And his third one is, he declares before he does it, he says, I'm going to take the Buyant Uha for a diplomatic thing. So they're in. We get a little mix. I have no idea what's going to happen, but with 14 chips in, actually, what is the odds? 14 chips. Of course, I'm always doing the odds. So, no, there's 13 chips because 13, right? Yeah, 13 chips because Russia added one, he added two, so there's 13 total chips. There's starts with 2 axis. He added 2 axis, so that's 4 out of the 13. So that's it's about 30%, right? So 30%. There's 6 no effect ones. So if he gets a no effect, there's no problem. The only ones he doesn't want to pull is the pro-allies. He doesn't want to pull pro-allied because that'll automatically put this as a pro-ally, and Russia could walk into it and immediately activate it, right? So let's see what he gets. He's decided in Buyant Uha, and here we go. 30% chance for a plus, 75%, then it won't be negative. So here we go, ready? So, neutral. So absolutely no effect. So I took the white neutral. It says neutral, but it's what this is the no effect placement. So that's what happened with that. All right, so onward to the next one. America. America says, oh, America. America wants this one. America says, hello, Franco. I want Spain because America's going to be coming down here with their big navy and they're going to go for it. Right? So for Spain, he's going to, America says, does the exact same thing. So he's going to take 2 pro-allied chips. He's going to take 2 pro-allied chips and he's going to put both pro-allied chips in there. That's $1 a piece. That's 1 and 1. He's only got 1 more. He can only spend up to $3. So his third one is going to be to pull. So his third one, he's identified first before he pulls. He says Spain. We're going to have some good diplomatic negotiations with Spain. I hope they're successful. Wait, did someone send Trump? Oh, shit. Pro-Axis. Oh, that one went south for America. The thing about it is there's risk. This is very nice. It's a strategic play. You put it in, you put your money in, it doesn't go away, it stays in the bag. There's always potential. However, there is a chance, it's a cloud of war, there's a potential risk. So he pulled pro-Axis. Spain no longer is a true neutral. Alignment with D&D, right? Is no more a full neutral. Now pro-Axis. That's why I like these HBGs that I have, because they actually say pro-Axis, and now we know that that's a pro-Axis. Now Germany can just walk in and get Spain. Thank you, America, for doing that. Germany thanks you. America's very pissed off about this scenario. So, guess who's up first? It's Germany. It is Germany. Germany's like, oh, I'm just gonna make sure I run in there in the non-combat phase and get my gaggle of infantry. What do we get? 6 infantry? Boom, 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 4, 5. Ooh, almost got it off the butt. 6 infantry, yay! Actually, one of them's the blue infantry, right? One of the blue infantry was the Spanish and the blue infantry was actually fought on in the Russian war, on the Russian front, the Polish front. Anyway, side issue. So that's what's going to happen with that pro-Axis. It's Germany's turn. So Germany says, okay, I'm going for Turkey. Maybe Saudi Arabia. Switzerland, why? I could, but you don't get any money for it. But Turkey's worth 2, and that's 8 people. I'm already get Spain. If I could turn this pro-Axis, you know who's coming up next after me? Only UK can try to stop it. Looks like maybe if Italy could just jump on it if it's a pro-Axis. So Germany says, all right, I'm going for it. I'm going to take 2 pro-Axis. I'm going to buy, let's put the bag down. I'm going to buy 2 pro-Axis. And I'm going to put in both in. That's $2. So he's maximizing his Fed. Now he's also thinking that maybe he just buys that third one, since a pro-Axis just got pulled, and giving Italy the best chance to turn it to pro-Axis, and then the next time around, maybe he gets it. But Russia can try to take it back. USA can try to take it back by utilizing diplomacy. They can go right on it. But let's just try it. Let's just see if Germany gets it. So he's decided Turkey. He could get risky and just pull for 2, but he already put his 2 chips in. Let's see what we're going to get here. What is Germany? This is actually going really well for Axis, isn't it? Yeah. Oh, no. Oh, so that's the way it crumbles, right? Pro-allied. Turkey has turned into pro-allied. German's big gamble is just proven poor, especially since coming right after Germany is UK. Can UK get there? I doubt they're going to have the ships to get there. Or they do have the tranny at the start of 42 to get there, right? Ooh, that's going to be, what a risk. What a risk. Oh, well, that's interesting, isn't it, guys? That's pretty funny. You know what England's going to do? All right, so let's go back to England's return. So you see that the chip actually stays out. Its potential is done. When you pull a Pro Allies or a Pro Axis, the potential of it, the money that was inside of it is done. It's been played. It's a very simple, very elegant. It's strategic. We can continue. You can see how it goes, but this is good enough for an explanation, I think. Because Italy could. There are parts for England, especially if they want to get free infantry down in Angola and free money down in Mozambique, in South Africa. Mozambique, Angola, it's very nice and safe ones for them because they can hit them if they turn pro-axis right off the bat because they actually have their, it's very nice and safe. We can't forget Portugal as another gain if necessary. We already talked about the very next step, Afghanistan. How does that go? Now, let's take another look at this. So we have Iraq here, pro-allies, pro-Iraq. Now, in 42, they've already been identified. They've already been taken. But in 40, they aren't. They're just pro-axis waiting to go. Well, those are working the same as a pro-axis. So if they are currently pro-axis, as they are, you could, or Italy could, or Germany could, Japan could, they could try to activate by pulling. So if it's a pro-axis and you pull for it, like say England couldn't get to Turkey. So England does its two purchases and puts more in and tries to pull a pro-allied, and they pull a nothing. So let's just say that they ended up pulling another pro-allied. Well, what happens at this point? Well, in mobilized phase, this now goes away from being pro-allied. And I'll just grab this one for England somewhere in here. It goes away. It doesn't become a double pro-allied, but the potential has been spent. The money has been realized. It wasn't thrown away or burned. Next thing, now that is in the mobilized unit phase, that will become 8 infantry for Turkey. For Turkey will become two IPCs for England, 8 infantry, mobilized unit phase. But that takes the risk. You've already seen what can happen. Germany pulled and got the pro-allied. Turkey could pull, but what if he couldn't get there and he pulled to try to get it, but he ended up getting a no effect? Well, no effect, nothing happened. Great. What if he pulled and he pulled a pro-axis? Well, they actually counterbalance each other. So what you did was you ended up removing that advantage. So now it's back to this. It's back to just a full. It's back to a full. So as an example here, this starts at pro-axis. In 1940, you could try as the axis to try to activate it. I mean, without even getting there, you can. If you pull another axis, you suddenly activate that. That could automatically be a German or an Italian. Whoever pulls it, they get it. And next thing you know, you got two Italian in your mobile unit phase. You just suddenly are just kicking the crap out of someone because they're just not used to this. Suddenly there's 2 popping up Italian infantry there. Now, as you see, it doesn't always go your way. There is risk involved, which makes the strategic nature of this method of diplomacy. First, it's simple. It fits with the pro-axis, pro-allies, true neutral methodology. Unconditional surrender is a great game. This is where it's based off of. And it just works beautifully. It allows you to open up the map. And as I explained in the video, you could open up Brazil. Germany could take Brazil. It says pro-allies over there. Pull it away. Make it a true neutral. When it activates, if Germany can activate at 53 and can activate Argentina and Chile, go for it. Take it. Try to get the units. Take Argentina. Take Chile. Argentina has. Sorry, maybe we should be looking at it. Take Argentina. Brazil. Take Argentina when it becomes pro-axis, because if you pull a pro-axis and if it's a pro-axis and you pull a pro-axis, boom, and you pull a pro-axis, there it happens right away. Now the way I would play is if 53 happens, it automatically becomes pro-axis, and so if you're pulling your chips, you're just boom, pull your chips. At this point, you move a guy, you just take it. You move, the rest of your attacks are going into Brazil. Maybe that's pro-allied by now. Maybe you didn't get it. Maybe you turned it into an absolute true neutral. It's no longer pro-allied. You can use diplomacy this way. You can play off Venezuela. My God, Venezuela. That just gets you right into underneath of Central America. So you get the exam. You get to see how it works. You get to see the methodology of it, and you probably understand now why I utilize it, why I like this, and why it would be a great addition to the game. It is another level of strategic play without adding complications or charts, D12 dice rolls for 1,000 different jumps. You got to roll 1 or 2 or 1 or 2 or 3. Oh God, let it happen, let it flow. We only got 8 turns. Stuff needs to enact, and you can also counter it, right? It isn't just automatically going, oh, now I suddenly own Turkey. No, you turned it pro-axis. But you've also, when you turn it pro-axis, you're taking your chip out. It means you get a higher, if they're playing along with you, there's a higher number of pro-allied at this point. So allies can try to counter, throw in more chips, try to counter, try to take it off. It adds what's missing with Axis and allies, and is always missed with Axis and allies, is the diplomatic play of the game. This, what I've just explained to you, brings it back without destroying the game at all. It just adds. Zella, there we go, boys. That's the end of Pagan's Exile.